March 15th, 1943. Mid-Atlantic, 800 miles east of Newfoundland. The ocean surface erupts in a column of fire and seawater as the British freighter SS Clarissa Radcliffe breaks apart, her spine shattered by 2 torpedoes from U-boat 632. Captain Lieutenant Hans Joachim Schwantke watches through his periscope as the 7,000-ton vessel lists violently to starboard, her cargo of Canadian grain and American trucks spilling into the freezing Atlantic. Men are already in the water, their screams swallowed by the wind. Schwantke feels no triumph, only the cold satisfaction of a job done. He's been at sea for 31 days. This is his 4th kill. Tube dray ready. His weapons officer reports from below. But Schwantke has already seen what he needs to see. The convoy's escort screen, 2 aging destroyers and a corvette is racing toward the last known bearing, dropping depth charges in a predictable pattern 3 kilometers south. They're hunting ghosts. U-632 is already slipping away at 4 knots, silent as a shadow, her electric motors barely humming. In the control room, the crew exchanges grins. The British are always too slow, too few, too blind. This is the reality of March 1943. Germany's U-boat fleet is winning the Battle of the Atlantic. For 2 years, the Kriegsmarine has waged a relentless campaign of attrition, sending convoy after convoy to the bottom. The statistics are staggering. In the first 3 months of 1943 alone, U-boats sink over 500,000 tons of Allied shipping. Admiral Karl Donitz, commander of the U-boat arm, has nearly 400 operational submarines at his disposal, more than at any point in the war. His strategy is brutally simple: gather the boats into coordinated wolf packs, intercept convoys in the mid-Atlantic air gap where land-based aircraft cannot reach, and strike in overwhelming numbers under cover of darkness. The air gap is the killing field. Stretching roughly 600 miles across the central Atlantic, it's a void where convoys sail blind and vulnerable. British Coastal Command's Liberators and Sunderlands can patrol the eastern and western approaches, but they lack the range to cover the gap's deadly center. Here, the U-boats own the sea. Aboard U-632, Schwantke surfaces after nightfall, running his diesels to recharge batteries and make speed toward the next intercept point. His radio man decodes a message from Bishop der U-boat, U-boat command in Paris. 6 boats are being directed toward convoy HX-229, a massive formation of 60 merchant ships steaming northeast toward Liverpool. Schwantke plots the course. They'll reach the convoy in 18 hours. Another wolf pack. His executive officer, Oberleutnant Sir C. Klaus Peterson, mutters, "The British won't know what hit them." But something is changing, though Schwantke doesn't know it yet. 3 days earlier, in a secure hangar at Naval Air Station Norfolk, Virginia, a peculiar vessel is being fitted with aircraft. She's not a proper fleet carrier like the Yorktown or Lexington, those massive purpose-built warships that dominate the Pacific. This ship is smaller, slower, cheaper. Her hull was laid down as a merchant freighter, then hastily converted with a flight deck welded atop her superstructure. Her designation? CVE-9, USS Bogue. The sailors call her a baby flat top. The official name is Escort carrier. To the men who'll serve on her, she's something else entirely. A Woolworth carrier. Cheap. Expendable. A 5-and-dime store ship. On the Bogue's narrow deck, aircraft handlers wrestle a Grumman TBF Avenger into position, its folded wings locked, its belly loaded with a Mark 24 mine, an acoustic homing torpedo the Navy prefers to call Fido. Nearby, a Grumman F-4F Wildcat sits chalked and chained, its .50 caliber guns loaded. These planes will hunt submarines. Lieutenant Commander Howard Roberts Tex Avery, skipper of Composite Squadron 9, watches the preparations with a mixture of skepticism and determination. He's a dive bomber pilot by trade, blooded at Midway. This Atlantic duty feels like a demotion convoy escort, sub-hunting, endlessly circling gray water. But Avery's seen the casualty reports. He knows what's at stake. If the convoys stop sailing, Britain starves. If Britain falls, the war is lost. Think this bucket will make a difference, Skipper? His wingman, Ensign Bobby Hutchins, asks. Avery lights a cigarette, squinting at the horizon. We're about to find out. March 22nd, 1943. North Atlantic, 500 miles south of Iceland. The USS Bogue pitches violently in 12-foot swells, her flat deck rising and falling like a cork in a bathtub. On the bridge, Captain Giles Short grips the railing as icy spray lashes the windows. He's a career destroyer man, accustomed to ships that cut through waves, not this ungainly hybrid that rides atop them like a drunken barge. The Bogue displaces 11,000 tons, measures 495 feet stem to stern, and can barely make 18 knots with a favorable wind. Her flight deck is so short that pilots joke you need a running start just to taxi. But she's here. And she's operational. Below deck in the ready room, Tex Avery briefs his pilots for the morning patrol. The air reeks of coffee, cigarette smoke, and aviation fuel. A dozen men, some barely old enough to shave, crowd around a plotting table marked with grease pencil tracks. Convoy ONS. 143 merchant ships bound for Halifax. Steams 800 yards off the Bogue's starboard beam. The escort screen consists of 4 destroyers, 2 corvettes, and now, for the first time, an aircraft carrier. Gentlemen, Avery says, tapping the chart, our job is simple. We're the eyes. U-boats can't attack what they can't reach. And they can't reach convoys when aircraft are overhead. We'll fly rotating patrols, Avengers and Wildcats, in pairs, covering a 50-mile radius around the convoy. If you spot a surfaced U-boat, you report position and attack immediately. Don't wait for permission. Depth charges on the first pass, Fido torpedoes on the second if you've got them. Ensign Hutchins raises his hand. What if they dive before we reach them? Then, you mark the position and vector in the destroyers. But most of the time, they won't dive. They'll think they have time. Avery's expression hardens. That's their mistake. At 0630 hours, the first Avenger lurches down the Bogue's deck, Avery at the controls. The TBF's right cyclone engine roars as the plane claws for altitude, barely clearing the bow before the deck drops away beneath it. Hutchins follows in a Wildcat, his fighter's stubby profile bouncing once on the deck before catching air. Together, they bank into the gray dawn, climbing to 1,500 feet. From the cockpit, the convoy looks like a child's bathtub. Toys, tiny shapes trailing white, wakes in a vast, empty ocean. Avery keys his radio. Bogue control. This is Ranger 1. Patrol. Pattern Alpha. Commencing sweep. The Avenger drones northeast, scanning the horizon. Visibility is 8 miles under broken clouds. Avery's radio man, gunner, Aviation Radio Man 2nd Class Jimmy Kowalski, mans the radar, set a bulky ASV, air-to-surface vessel unit, that can detect surfaced submarines at ranges up to 15 miles. It's primitive, prone to false returns from whitecaps, but it's a revolution. For the first time in the Atlantic War, hunters can see in the dark. 1,200 miles to the east, Capitan Lieutenant Schwantke surfaces U-632 inches, the pre-dawn gloom. His boat has been submerged for 19 hours, stalking convoy ONS-1 at periscope depth. Now, with batteries nearly exhausted, he must surface to run his diesels. The bridge watch scrambles topside, scanning for aircraft with binoculars. They see nothing. The sky is empty. Clear horizon. The watch officer reports. We can stand of in Dodd. N.O. Schwantke nods. Both diesels ahead full. Charge batteries and make turns for 15 knots. We'll close the convoy by nightfall. It's a routine procedure, repeated thousands of times across the Atlantic. U-boats are surface raiders. By design, they hunt on the surface, where they're fast and have unlimited endurance, diving only to evade or attack. The key to survival is staying surfaced as long as possible, especially in the air gap where Allied planes cannot reach. Except now, they can. At 0712 hours, Kowalski's radar chirps. Contact. Bearing 045. Range 12 miles. Avery banks the Avenger hard right, pushing the throttle forward. Hutchins, stay high and cover me. We've got a customer. The Wildcat climbs to 3,000 feet as Avery descends, skimming 50 feet above the wave tops. At 8 miles, he spots a gray-black shape cutting through the swells, wake white and distinct. The U-boat is running on the surface, bow pointed west, making speed. Tally-ho! Avery shouts into the radio. Bogue Control, this is Ranger 1. Confirmed U-boat contact, bearing 045 from convoy, range 8 miles. Attacking now. Aboard U-632, the bridge watch doesn't see the Avenger until it's 3 miles out, a dark dot growing larger against the eastern sky. By then, it's too late. Flugzeug! The watch officer screams. Allah arm! The klaxon howls. Men pour down the conning tower hatch as Schwanke slams the dive klaxon himself. The diesels choke off. Vents open with a hiss. U-632 begins her crash dive, but she needs 60 seconds to submerge, and Avery will reach her in 40. The Avenger roars over the U-boat at 180 knots, Avery's thumb jamming the bomb release. 4 Mark 47 depth charges tumble from the TBF's belly, set to detonate at 25 feet. Schwanke is halfway down the hatch when the ocean behind his boat erupts in 4 towering geysers. The shockwave slams U-632 sideways, knocking men off their feet. The conning tower is still above water. Avery pulls up hard, banking for another pass. Hutchins, strafe the tower. Keep them from diving. The Wildcat screams down. 50 caliber guns hammering. Tracers rip across U-632's deck, sparking off the conning tower, shredding the bridge, combing. One of the lookouts, still scrambling for the hatch, is cut nearly in half. The others throw themselves below, but it's too late for a second attack. U-632's deck slides under, her stern rising, and then she's gone, vanished into the dark water, with only a swirl of foam to mark her passage. Avery circles the area, watching for oil or debris. Nothing. Bogue Control, Splash 1 U-boat. Possible kill, awaiting confirmation. U-632 is damaged but alive. In the control room, Schwanke clutches a stanchion as his boat plunges to 150 meters. Hydraulic fluid drips from a ruptured line. The depth gauge needle quivers. His men are silent, pale, staring at the overhead, as if waiting for it to collapse. Damage report, Schwanke orders. His voice steady, despite the ice in his gut. Stern planes sluggish, port hydrophone smashed. Multiple leaks, but controllable. Schwanke nods slowly. The boat will survive, but something fundamental has just changed. For the first time in his career, he's been caught on the surface, in the middle of the Atlantic, where no aircraft should exist. The air gap isn't empty anymore. Above, Avery's Avenger circles once more, then turns back toward the convoy. In the rear cockpit, Kowalski grins. Think we got him, Skipper? Maybe, maybe not. Avery lights a cigarette, cupping the flame against the slipstream. But he won't forget us. May 4th, 1943. U-Boat Command Headquarters, Paris. Gross Admiral Karl Donitz stands before a wall-sized map of the Atlantic, his hands clasped behind his back, eyes tracing the red pins that mark his submarines. Each pin represents a boat, a crew, a weapon in his campaign to strangle Britain's lifeline. In the past 3 months, 34 pins have been removed, 34 U-boats lost, over 1,400 men dead or captured. The losses are accelerating. In April alone, 15 boats failed to return. His chief of staff, Konteradmiral Eberhard Gott, stands beside him, a folder of casualty reports under his arm. Herr Grossadmiral, we're receiving increased reports of aircraft attacks in the central Atlantic. Boats are being caught on the surface during daylight transit. Donitz turns, his weathered face carved with lines of fatigue. How? Coastal Command doesn't have the range. They don't need it anymore. Gott opens the folder, spreading reconnaissance photographs across the table. The Americans are deploying small aircraft carriers with their convoys. We've identified at least 6 now. Operational: Bogue, Card, Core, Santee, Croatan, Block Island. They call them CVEs, escort carriers. Donitz picks up a photo showing the USS Bogue from a long-range Focke-Wulf reconnaissance flight. She looks insignificant, a merchant hull with a flight deck bolted on top, dwarfed by the destroyers around her. He's seen intelligence reports on these vessels. Converted cargo ships and tankers. Slow, lightly armed, with tiny air groups of perhaps 20 aircraft. The Luftwaffe calls them Woolworth carriers, cheap trinkets from a discount store. These are merchant conversions, Donitz says dismissively. They cannot operate proper fleet aircraft. Their decks are too short, their elevators too weak. Perhaps, Gott concedes, but they don't need fleet carriers. They need a platform for anti-submarine aircraft, and these ships provide exactly that. Our boats are reporting attacks by Avengers and Wildcats up to 700 kilometers from any land base. The air gap is closing, Herr Grossadmiral. Donitz sets down the photograph, his jaw tightening. For 2 years, his strategy has depended on the gap, that blessed void in the mid-Atlantic where his wolf packs could operate freely. Now the enemy has found a solution, and it's so obvious he's furious he didn't anticipate it. Of course they'd put flight decks on merchant hulls. The Americans build merchant ships faster than Germany can sink them. Why not weaponize the surplus? What are the boat commanders saying? Donitz asks. Gott hesitates. Morale is strained. They're calling the carriers Gelichträger escort carriers. Some use less flattering terms, but they're learning to fear them. The carriers operate in hunter-killer groups, 1 CVE with 4 or 5 destroyers, working independently of the convoys. They're not just defending anymore, they're hunting. Donitz walks to the window overlooking the Avenue Foch, watching Parisians hurry through spring rain. Increase defensive armament on all boats. Quadruple the 20mm flak guns. The boats must fight back. Herr Grossadmiral, with respect. Gott chooses his words carefully. A U-boat cannot win a gun battle with an aircraft. The pilots simply stand off and radio the destroyers. Our boats are being hunted by coordinated air-sea teams now. They have radar, acoustic torpedoes. The advantage has shifted. For a long moment, Donitz says nothing. Then, quietly, how long can we sustain current loss rates? At the current rate? 6 months before our operational numbers become critically low. Perhaps less. Donitz nods slowly, the weight of command settling on his shoulders like a stone. Issue new standing orders. All boats are to remain submerged during daylight transits, even in the central Atlantic. Surface only at night for battery charging. Accept the reduced mobility. That will cut their effectiveness by half. It will keep them alive. Donitz turns back to the map, his voice hardening. The wolf packs achieved miracles in 1942. We sank 4 million tons. But if we lose the boats faster than we can replace them, we lose the Atlantic. And if we lose the Atlantic, we lose the war. Gott salutes and departs, leaving Donitz alone with his map and his red pins. Somewhere in the Atlantic right now, 27 U-boats are hunting. By tomorrow, 1 or 2 more pins will likely disappear. June 13th, 1943, North Atlantic, 400 miles southwest of the Azores. The USS Card plows through moderate seas, her flight deck crowded with aircraft. She's the 3rd escort carrier deployed to the Atlantic, and in 6 weeks of operations, her air group has sunk 2 U-boats and damaged 3 more. The hunter-killer concept is proving devastatingly effective. The CVE operates independently, free from convoy escort duties, with a single mission: find U-boats and destroy them. Lieutenant, junior grade. Bill Chamberlain taxis his Avenger to the catapult, feeling the deck crew hook the bridle to his aircraft. The TBM-1C is the latest variant, equipped with upgraded radar and 8 forward-firing 50-caliber guns in the wings, an innovation that turns the torpedo bomber into a gunship. In his bomb bay, 4 depth charges, and 2 Mark 24 Fido acoustic torpedoes. The catapult officer twirls his flag. Chamberlain shoves the throttle to the stop, and the catapult fires with a bone-jarring lurch. 3 seconds later, he's airborne, climbing through scattered clouds toward his patrol station 60 miles northeast. At 1,440 hours, his radar operator, Arm 2C Roberts, calls out a contact. Surface target, bearing 090, range 18 miles. Chamberlain banks toward it, descending to 200 feet. At 12 miles, he spots the telltale wake, a U-boat running on the surface, making speed. He keys his radio. Card control, this is Hunter 2-3, confirmed U-boat contact, bearing 090 from Point Zebra, range 1 to 2 miles. Attacking. The U-boat is U-217. Captain Lieutenant Kurt Reichenbach commanding. She's been at sea for 42 days, returning from the Caribbean with empty torpedo tubes and low fuel. Reichenbach is pushing his luck, running surfaced in daylight to make better time toward France. His lookouts are exhausted, scanning skies that have been empty for hours. They don't see Chamberlain until he's 4 miles out. Flugzeug, Steuerbord Querab. Reichenbach reaches the bridge in seconds, binoculars snapping up. The Avenger is already diving, coming in fast and low. Too close for a crash dive. All flak guns. Open fire. Engage that aircraft. Two 20mm guns on the conning tower swivel toward the incoming plane, barrels hammering. Tracers arc across the sky. Chamberlain sees the U-boat's deck erupt with muzzle flashes and grins coldly. They want to fight? He'll give them one. At 800 yards, he opens up with his wing guns. 50 calibers roar, pouring 100 rounds per second into the U-boat's superstructure. The flak gunners disintegrate, their weapons spinning silent. Reichenbach throws himself flat as bullets ricochet off the conning tower, screaming past his head. Chamberlain roars over the boat at masthead height, releasing 2 depth charges. They hit the water 30 feet off U-217's port beam and detonate almost simultaneously. The twin explosions lift the submarine's stern out of the water, snapping her like a whip. Inside, the lights go out. Men are hurled into bulkheads. The chief engineer screams that the port diesel is wrecked. The starboard shaft is bent. Reichenbach hauls himself up, ears ringing, blood streaming from his nose. His boat is crippled, dead in the water, unable to dive. The Avenger is circling for another pass. "Abandon flak stations," Reichenbach shouts. "All hands below, prepare to dive on auxiliary power." But Chamberlain isn't making another depth charge run. He's climbing to 800 feet, circling wide, giving his radio man time to set up the Fido. Roberts arms the Mark 24, checks the gyros, opens the bomb bay doors. "Fido ready, skipper." Chamberlain rolls into his attack run, lining up on U-217's swirl of disturbed water. The U-boat is trying to dive now, her deck awash, conning tower just visible. He pickles off the Fido from 600 feet. The torpedo drops clean, hits the water with a splash, and disappears. For 15 seconds, nothing happens. Then the Mark 24's acoustic seeker acquires the sound of U-217's struggling diesels and rudders, homing in. Reichenbach is climbing down the hatch when the torpedo strikes amidships, just below the waterline. The explosion tears a 6-foot hole in the pressure hull. U-217 goes down in less than a minute, her bow rising vertically before she slides stern first into the abyss. Reichenbach and 12 men make it off. The other 42 go down with the boat. Chamberlain circles the survivors, marking their position, radioing for a destroyer. He doesn't feel triumph, just grim satisfaction. One less U-boat, one less threat to the convoys. By the end of June 1943, the statistics tell the story. 41 U-boats lost in a single month, the worst losses in the entire war. Dönitz withdraws his boats from the North Atlantic, conceding defeat in the convoy routes. The Battle of the Atlantic's critical phase is over. But the killing has only just begun. August 11th, 1943. USS Escort, 600 miles west of the Canary Islands. The ready room is thick with humidity and tension. Lieutenant Commander William M. Mac McCormick stands at the plotting board, chalk in hand, drawing concentric circles around a position fix radioed in by a patrolling Avenger 2 hours earlier. His pilots, 16 men ranging from grizzled veterans to kids fresh from Pensacola, lean forward, studying the marks. "We've got signal intelligence indicating at least 3 U-boats operating in this area," McCormick says, tapping the chart. "They're forming a patrol line waiting to intercept convoys bound for Gibraltar. Intelligence calls it the Truths Group. Command wants them dead before they get into position. This is the new reality of the Atlantic War." The escort carriers aren't just defending convoys anymore, they're on offense, actively hunting U-boats in their own transit lanes, turning vast stretches of ocean into killing grounds. The Corps and her sister ships operate as independent hunter-killer groups, each CVE accompanied by a screen of destroyers equipped with the latest sonar and hedgehog mortars. They're pack hunters now, and the U-boats are the prey. Ensign Stewart. Stu. Doty raises his hand. He's 22, with exactly 47 hours of combat flight time. "Sir, what if they're running submerged? Radar won't pick them up. Then we use what we've got," McCormick replies. "At periscope depth, they leave a wake. At snorkel depth, they leave exhaust vapor. And sooner or later, they have to surface to charge batteries or make speed. That's when we get them." He pauses, scanning the faces. "Gentlemen, U-Boat Command has pulled most of their boats out of the North Atlantic convoy routes. They're running scared. Our job is to make sure they stay that way. Hunt them in their transit zones. Sink them before they reach the hunting grounds. Questions?" Silence. "Good. First launch at 0500. Get some sleep." At dawn, Doty finds himself strapped into the cockpit of an Avenger, his radio man and gunner checking equipment behind him. The catapult bridle snaps taut. The launch officer's flag drops. Doty's stomach stays on the deck as the aircraft rockets forward, clawing into gray morning sky. For 3 hours, he sees nothing but ocean endless, gray, empty. His radar sweeps back and forth, showing only weather returns and the occasional whitecap bloom. His fuel gauge creeps downward. He's about to turn back when Arm 2C Lewis, his radio man, shouts through the intercom, "Contact. Bearing 270. Range 14 miles. Intermittent. Could be a snorkel." Doty banks hard left. Throttle forward. Dropping to 50 feet. At 10 miles, he spots a thin white line cutting through the swells, a feather of diesel exhaust trailing behind. A U-boat at snorkel depth, running just below the surface, recharging batteries while minimizing exposure. "Core Control, this is Rover 5. Contact confirmed. Bearing 270 from Point Baker. Looks like a snorkeling sub. I'm going in." The U-boat is U-664, Corvettin Capitan Adolf Grafe commanding. She's been submerged for 16 hours, batteries nearly exhausted, crawling toward her patrol station at 4 knots. Grafe knows the risks of snorkeling in daylight, but he has no choice. His boat needs power. The snorkel, a retractable tube that allows diesel operation while submerged, is supposed to make him invisible. But the Americans have learned to spot the exhaust vapor, and Doty has sharp eyes. At 3 miles, Doty begins his attack run. The U-boat snorkel is still visible, though the hull is completely submerged. Standard depth charges won't work against a deep-running target. But Doty's TBM carries something better. A Mark 24 Fido, specifically designed to hunt submerged submarines. He slows to 140 knots, opens the bomb bay, and lines up on the snorkel wake. At 600 feet, he releases the Fido. The torpedo drops away, hits the water, and dives. Its acoustic seeker goes active, pinging, listening for propeller noise. Inside U-664, the sonar operator's face goes white. "Torpedo Gereiche. Bearing 090, closing fast." "Hard left rudder," Grafe shouts. "Emergency dive. All ahead flank." But the Fido is too close, too smart. It ignores the evasion, homing on the loudest noise, the starboard propeller shaft. It strikes U-664's stern at 1,200 pounds per square inch, detonating against the pressure hull. The aft torpedo room floods instantly. The lights die. The boat drops bow first, out of control, sinking through 200 meters, 300, her hull groaning under the crushing pressure. At 380 meters, the pressure hull collapses. U-664 implodes in a fraction of a second, killing all 47 men before they can even register what's happening. On the surface, an oil slick blooms, followed by a scattering of debris, shattered wood, a life jacket, a sailor's cap. Doty circles the wreckage, confirming the kill, then turns for home. His hands are shaking. He's just killed 47 men, men with families, with names, with lives as real as his own. But he swallows the thought, buries it deep. This is war. This is the mission. By September 1943, the escort carriers and their hunter-killer groups have sunk 25 U-boats. The numbers are climbing every month. November 2nd, 1,943. U-boat U-405, Bay of Biscay, outbound from Brest. Oberleutnant Zur. See, Rolf Heinrich Hauptmann stands on the bridge of U-405, watching the French coast recede into mist. This is his first patrol as commander, a reward for 18 months of service as a watch officer. His boat is a Type Civic C, the workhorse of the U-boat fleet, armed with 14 torpedoes and a reinforced flak platform mounting 2 quad 20mm cannons. The flak upgrade is Donitz's response to the air threat. If the boats can't hide from aircraft, they'll fight them. Hauptmann has his orders. Transit submerged by day, surface only at night. Avoid engagement with aircraft whenever possible. But the Bay of Biscay is crawling with Allied planes, RAF Coastal Command Liberators, and Sunderlands, roving hunter-killer groups with escort carriers. The transit alone is a gauntlet. For 2 days, U-405 creeps westward at snorkel depth, emerging only after dark to run her diesels at full power. On the third night, 200 miles west of Brest, Hauptmann surfaces under a moonless sky and pushes his diesels to 15 knots, racing to clear the danger zone. At 0230 hours, his radar detector screams. An aircraft is painting him with radar, closing fast. Hauptmann has seconds to decide. Dive or fight? Man the flak guns, he roars. All hands to battle stations. Stay surfaced. This is the new doctrine. Stand and fight. Deny the aircraft an easy kill. His gun crews scramble topside, swinging the quad 20 mm's toward the sky. The radar detector's pitch climbs higher. The aircraft is close, very close. Then they see it a shadow against the stars, low and fast, perhaps 500 feet up. A Liberator, probably RAF. The flak crews open fire without waiting for orders, tracers arcing into the darkness. But it's not a Liberator. It's a TBF Avenger from the USS Card, piloted by Lieutenant Howard Swede Svensson, and he's been hunting U-boats for 6 months. He sees the muzzle flashes, spots the U-boat's silhouette, and rolls into his attack without hesitation. Svensson comes in from the starboard beam, too fast for the gunners to track. His wing guns hammer, raking the conning tower, killing 3 men in the first burst. Hauptmann throws himself behind the bridge, combing as bullets spark off steel around him. Then Svensson is overhead, releasing 4 depth charges in a stick. The charges straddle U-405, perfectly 2 on each side, detonating at 25 feet. The shockwave lifts the boat bodily out of the water, slamming her down again with a sickening crunch. Inside, the control room is chaos. Instruments shatter, pipes burst, men are thrown into machinery. The chief engineer screams that they're flooding in 3 compartments. Hauptmann hauls himself upright, ears ringing, tasting blood. His boat is dying. The stern is settling, the bow rising. He has maybe 2 minutes. All hands abandon ship. Allmann von board. The crew pours topside, leaping into the black water as U-405's stern slides under. Hauptmann is the last off. stepping into the sea as his command vanishes beneath him. Of 51 men, 43 survive the sinking. Svensson circles, dropping life rafts and a radio beacon, then heads back to the Card. A destroyer will pick up the survivors at dawn. Hopman treads water in the darkness, watching his crew cling to the rafts, and feels the weight of defeat settle over him. The ocean that once belonged to Germany now belongs to the hunters. March 17th, 1944. U-Boat Command Headquarters, Berlin. The map room has changed. Where once red pins clustered thick across the Atlantic, now only scattered markers remain isolated boats, skulking in distant waters, avoiding the hunting grounds entirely. Gross Admiral Donitz stands before the map in silence, his face a mask carved from stone. The numbers are undeniable, devastating. In the 12 months since May 1943, Germany has lost 237 U-boats. 237. Nearly 12,000 men, an entire generation of submariners gone to the bottom. Counter-Admiral Gott enters with the latest casualty report. He doesn't salute, doesn't speak. He simply places the folder on the table and waits. Donitz opens it. U-801, lost with all hands off the Azores. U-966, sunk by aircraft in the Bay of Biscay. U-231, destroyed by a hunter-killer group southwest of Ireland. U-572, missing, presumed lost. 4 boats in 1 week. The names blur together now. He's read so many death notices that they've become an abstraction, a hemorrhage of statistics that won't stop bleeding. How many operational boats do we have? Donitz asks, his voice hollow. 168, Gott replies, down from 212 last month. And of those, perhaps 80 are actually at sea. The rest are in port, repairing damage or awaiting crews. We're losing boats faster than the shipyards can build them. We're losing trained men faster than the schools can replace them. Donitz closes the folder. The Führer still demands results. He doesn't understand. The Führer doesn't go to sea. Gott interrupts quietly. It's a dangerous thing to say, but they're alone, and the truth must be spoken. Herr Gross-Admiral, the Battle of the Atlantic is over. We lost. The escort carriers, the damned Woolworth carriers we mocked, they closed the air gap. They're sinking our boats in transit, in the patrol areas, even in the Bay of Biscay before they can reach open water. Combined with improved radar, hedgehog mortars, acoustic torpedoes, shore-based very long-range aircraft, we're fighting an enemy who can see in the dark, strike from the air and the sea simultaneously, and who builds ships faster than we can sink them. We had our chance in 1942. That chance is gone. For a long moment, Donitz says nothing. Then, quietly, what would you have me do? Surrender the U-boat fleet? Concede defeat? I would have you save the men who are left. Gott meets his commander's eyes. Every boat we send out now has less than a 50% chance of returning. The boys we're sending to sea, some of them have had 6 weeks of training. 6 weeks. And then we put them in a steel coffin and tell them to go sink the enemy. It's murder, Herr Gross-Admiral. We're murdering our own men. Donitz turns back to the map, his shoulders sagging under the weight of command. He knows Gott is right. The war is lost. Perhaps not the entire war, not yet, but his war, the war beneath the waves. The U-boats that once terrorized the Atlantic are now the terrorized, hunted relentlessly by an enemy that has learned their patterns, countered their tactics, and industrialized their destruction. Issue orders, Donitz says finally. All boats are to withdraw from North Atlantic convoy routes. Relocate operations to the South Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, the Arctic routes to Murmansk, anywhere the Americans haven't deployed their damned escort carriers. And he pauses, the words sticking in his throat. And reduce patrol commitments. We'll send fewer boats. Conserve what strength we have left. It's not quite surrender, but it's close enough. May 6th, 1944. USS Guadalcanal, Central Atlantic. 150 miles northwest of the Cape Verde Islands. Captain Daniel Gallery paces the bridge of the escort carrier USS Guadalcanal, coffee mug in hand, eyes fixed on the horizon. He's a maverick, known throughout the Navy for his aggressive tactics and his unorthodox ideas. While other CVE commanders focus on sinking U-boats, Gallery has a different ambition. He wants to capture one intact. Capture it, board it, tow it back to port, and strip every secret from its hull. Codebooks, cipher machines, technical specifications, everything. It's an insane idea. U-boats are designed to scuttle themselves if capture is imminent. Their crews are trained to destroy sensitive materials and open the seacocks. But Gallery is convinced it can be done, and he's drilled his destroyer escort crews relentlessly in boarding procedures. At 1,110 hours, an Avenger from Composite Squadron 8 radios a contact. U-boat surfaced, 120 miles northeast. Gallery grins. Launch the strike, and tell Commander Thornhill to get his boarding party ready. This might be our chance. The U-boat is U-505, Oberleutnant Zercy Harold Lang commanding. She's limping home to France after a disastrous patrol off West Africa. No kills, mechanical breakdowns, and a crew on the edge of nervous collapse. Lang is running surfaced in daylight, exhausted, gambling that this far from the convoy routes, he'll be safe. He's wrong. At 1,147 hours, the lookouts scream the alarm. 2 Avengers diving from 3,000 feet, coming in fast. Lang hits the dive klaxon, but he knows they won't make it. The first Avenger roars overhead, releasing depth charges that detonate alongside U-505's hull, shattering lights, rupturing pipes, knocking the hydroplanes offline. The boat begins to flood. Lang surfaces again, hoping to fight it out, but a Wildcat strafes his deck, killing 2 gunners and wounding 3 others. "We're flooding in the engine room," the chief engineer shouts. "I can't stop it." Lang makes the hardest decision of his life. Ali man von board. Abandon ship. Set scuttles. The crew pours topside, leaping into the water. 1 sailor opens the seacocks before abandoning ship. U-505 should sink in minutes. But Gallery has anticipated this. The destroyer escort Pillsbury races alongside the wallowing U-boat, and a 9-man boarding party led by Lieutenant Albert David leaps onto the slippery deck. David and his men scramble down the conning tower hatch into the flooded control room. Water is pouring in, knee-deep already, but the scuttling valves are accessible. Working in near darkness, choking on diesel fumes, they close the seacocks. Pumps are brought over from the Pillsbury. A tow cable is rigged. Against all odds, U-505 stays afloat. Gallery stands on the Guadalcanal's bridge, watching his prize being secured, and allows himself a rare smile. This is the first enemy warship captured by the U.S. Navy since the War of 1812. Inside U-505, the boarding party will find codebooks, an Enigma machine, acoustic torpedo manuals intelligence that will accelerate the already overwhelming Allied advantage. Oberleutnant Lang, treading water 500 yards away, watches his boat under tow and feels nothing but numb disbelief. He's failed every protocol, broken every rule. He's the first U-boat commander in history to lose his boat to capture. The shame will haunt him for the rest of his life. But Lang is just one man. His personal tragedy is a footnote. The real story is written in the statistics. By June 1944, U-boat sinkings have dropped to negligible levels, a handful of ships per month, where once it was dozens. The escort carriers, working in tandem with shore-based aircraft, destroyers, and code-breaking intelligence, have effectively exterminated the U-boat threat. The Atlantic is an Allied highway now, secure and unchallenged. The convoy routes that nearly starved Britain in 1942 now carry 1.5 million American soldiers toward the beaches of Normandy. Operation Overlord, the invasion of France, is only possible because the Battle of the Atlantic has been decisively won. August 10th, 1944. Kiel, Germany. Captain Lieutenant Hans-Joachim Schwantke stands on the dock at Kiel Naval Base, watching workers weld patches onto U-632's scarred hull. His boat has survived 2.5 years of war, longer than most, but she's old now, obsolete, held together with improvisation and welds. Schwantke himself is only 31, but he feels ancient. Of the 23 boats that deployed with him in 1942, only 3 are still operational. The rest are gone, sunk, scuttled, or rusting in shipyards awaiting repairs that will never come. A young officer approaches, fresh from the submarine school, his uniform still crisp. Herr Kalu, I've been assigned as your new watch officer. Schwantke studies the boy, because that's what he is, barely 20, eager and terrified in equal measure. How much training have you had? 14 weeks, Herr Kalu, 14 weeks. Once, it took 18 months to qualify as a U-boat officer. Schwantke nods slowly. What's your name? Lieutenant Xerxes Eric Weber. Herr Kaleo, listen to me, Weber. When we go to sea, you stay submerged, unless I personally authorize surfacing. You watch the sky every second. You trust the radar detector more than your eyes. And if you see an aircraft, any aircraft, even if it's 10 kilometers away, you dive immediately. No hesitation. Understood? Joel Herr Kalu. Schwantke turns back to his boat, remembering the days when U-boats ruled the Atlantic, when convoys scattered at the sight of a periscope, when the air gap was their sanctuary. Those days are gone. Now they're the hunted, skulking in the depths, avoiding the surface, praying that the next aircraft overhead doesn't carry their death. The cheap, improvised, mass-produced escort carriers, the Woolworth carriers that U-boat commanders once mocked, have hunted them to the edge of extinction, and the war is far from over.